Hi, everybody. Have you ever seen one of those news reports on television where they show you video footage of where a tornado just kind of rolled through an entire neighborhood? When you see those pictures, all that you feel and all that you see on the video is devastation, hopelessness, and heartbreak. It's difficult to watch because your heart just breaks for those people who have suffered through that disaster. But the thing is some of us feel like our lives are that disaster zone where the tornado just went through. Or maybe there's a loved one that we know, maybe even a child of ours that's veered off and their life looks like that disaster zone. When that's the case, you find yourself wondering, man, is there any way at all that God can take this huge mess and put everything back together? Well, that's the question that we're looking at today. We're going to pick up part 2 of a story that started with deep loss, turned into dangerous living, and winded up headed for death row. But God restored that life in a way that's really, well, today we get to hear the story of redemption that comes out of those circumstances. So stay with us to the rest of the show, and we're going to be encouraged by this TV.
I would say I've always been very confused with my gender identity.
Abortion can be another word for mercy.
People are suffering.
Could put
People are dying.
half of Trump supporters into what I call the basket of deplorables.
Every city in the United States has become much
That's the solution.
Welcome, everybody. We are Legacy Family Ministries, and this is the Unshakable Faith podcast. Today, we're going to hear a true story about how God completely restored a family from the devastating ruins of gang life and the death row sentence. I'm Dr. Steve Kilmer.
I'm Amy's son, and we'd like to invite you to get to know us better by downloading our app today, both the Apple and the Google Play stores. It's Legacy Family Ministries. We have online resources for you that you can use today, blogs, videos. Join us online.
And please help us help more Christian families build the faith of their families by liking this video, sharing it with your friends, and hitting the subscribe button. Hit below. Well, we have a very special guest joining us again this week. His name is Richie Betancourt, and he's going to share the second half of his incredible story. In last week's episode, he shared the beginning. It's a story that I referred to earlier as one of deep loss, then dangerous living, and then on the way to death row. And today we're going to get the redemption piece of that, how God put it all back together. So if you haven't had an opportunity to hear part 1 yet, you might want to jump back to next week's video and listen to that. But either way, we're going to jump right in and hear about how God helped Richie and his family that he was building, pick up all of those pieces and put it back together again. So Richie, thanks so much for joining us for week number 2.
Yeah, absolutely. My pleasure.
Well, could you give us a good start off here by, just for the benefit of those who maybe have not heard the first part of the story, just kind of summarize that first piece that got you from where you were, into that gang life, and then facing that death row sentence, and then you're out in your belief. Just going to cover that part for us.
Okay, yeah, awesome. So, like I shared on the last episode, it kind of started when I was 5 years old. I witnessed my brother's best friend murder 2 people in my front yard, and that kind of set a stage for me, looking for some sort of security, looking for some sort of acceptance, looking to belong. Got involved with gangs, drugs at a young age, started using methamphetamine at 10 years old, in and out of juvenile hall from the ages of 13 to 18. As I said before, I was locked up more than I was actually out on the streets. At 18, I was arrested for 2 murders in the first degree, 2 attempted murders, 6 gang enhancements, and wrongful use of firearm. I spent 3.5 years facing the death penalty for these charges. I ended up pleading guilty to accessory after the fact, where I was sentenced to 7 years, and I was released for time served. I did my time, struggled a little bit back and forth, trying to find my place in life, being out, being free, but having a criminal record wasn't very easy. Made the decision to leave California, which was where I was in gangs, with my wife, tried to find a better lifestyle for my girlfriend at the time and the baby that she had, and just not being able to do so, got into some more criminal activity here in Arizona where I was selling drugs and stuff. I was firmly warned by the police department that they were looking at me, and they recommended that I leave. So I went to the next town over, where I was introduced to Jesus and began going to church, and was just radically transformed by the presence of God and his love in my life.
That in and of itself is a story. Like I said, it doesn't end there, because I want to close the distance between what you just shared and the fact that you have a family now and you're a youth pastor. So that is just a huge, huge gap to fill. But start us out at that point. I mean, at some point along the line, you started a family. From what I understand, it wasn't intentional. But start us at that point, and then walk us through that whole process of how your family started.
So as I shared on the last episode, my wife, my girlfriend at the time, had a 3-month-old baby. And when I seen that baby and held her for the first time, I just fell in love. You know, something inside of me just knew that it was my job to keep this little thing safe. And so that's where the decision to leave came from. We came out here, we trying to look for a better lifestyle, as I said, and just in and out of jobs, trying to find a place where I fit in, not really finding anything. My wife became pregnant with our first son, Zephaniah. And I was kind of, at that point, I had a decent job, and I'm kind of dwindling in and out of, drugs and alcohol. We found Christ shortly after that, started going to church. And I had said in the last episode that my first time to church, it was almost like the lights had dimmed, and it was just me and the words coming out of this man's mouth. And God just got a hold of me. I mean, every church service was just on my knees, surrendering, asking God to come in, inviting him into every area of my life. And God showed up like you wouldn't believe. And I just instantly began to get set free from all kinds of lifestyle decisions I had. At this time, my wife was pregnant with our third child. And I remember I was laying in bed with her. We were going to church, but I didn't get clean right away. I'm laying in bed with my wife. She's pregnant, and I'm high on methamphetamines. So it's about 3:00 in the morning. And I remember just sitting there in bed, like looking at my pregnant wife and kind of disgusted with the lifestyle that I'm still choosing. And I said, God, I know that you're here. I feel your presence in I feel your presence in every aspect of my life. I know you're here, but I'm weak. I need you to take this from me because I can't do it without you. And I just cried out to God. It was a very sincere cry out to God. I wanted it so bad, and I just stopped. The hunger for methamphetamines just went away, and it went away for a long time. My wife and I, we started pressing in. We started getting involved. There was a program in our church called Restore. It's kind of like a Celebrate Recovery group where you come in here, and it's about learning your identity in Christ. So instead of NA or AA, where you stand up and say, "Hey, I am an addict," or "I am this" or "I am that," it's just, "Hey, you know what? I am a child of God. I am the righteousness of Christ." I'm standing on 2 Corinthians 5:17 that says that if I believe in him, I'm a new creation. Old things are gone. All things are new. And we just started working on the restoration in our life, started becoming a father, started becoming a good man to my wife and all these things. And then one day, we were clean for about a year, no alcohol, no drugs, no nothing. And an old friend from my past showed up, knocking on the door, and he had a bunch of drugs, and he invited us in, and we kind of fell for a few weeks. We fell back at it, and I remember, like, this guy just gave me so much of it, and I'm sitting there holding it. I look at my wife, and I said, "You know what, babe? This is the devil. This is the devil. We're falling for it." And so at that moment, we made the decision, like, we're not going to do it anymore. And we started pressing in. We started, volunteering. If the doors were open, I was here, taking the trash out, cleaning up the church, being a part of groups. We started running that Restore group ourselves. We started getting involved, started getting tied in, and then we got pregnant again. She got pregnant again, and with our fourth child. And we just made the decision that we were going to pour in. We were so tired of living a lie. We were so tired of living bound to things of this world. As we began to walk in who we were in Christ and have an understanding of our authority that He's given us, we began to stand on that authority. We started speaking life over ourselves, life over our children, over our marriage, over our household, over our jobs, and just started commanding things to go away, chains to be broken, and we started to notice restoration in our lives. I didn't mention this on the last episode, but when I had gotten arrested for murder, I had a girlfriend who was pregnant, and I knew that the baby was mine because while I was locked up, they did a paternity test, but I was locked up, so there was nothing I can do about it. So when I got out, I didn't look for her because I was still in the middle of all my garbage. And as years went on, I wanted to get to know her, but my family, or look for her. My family told me that it would be selfish of me to do that because my life was a wreck. I had no right to jump into someone's life and destroy a kid like I was destroying my own life, But as I got into Christ and I started coming to church and I started growing my own family and I started getting set free and redeemed from all these things, the hunger to have my kid in my life grew to wanting her in my life. So I began to pursue it and I started to look for her, and I knew her name, but I didn't know what she looked like. I'd never seen her before. I'd actually had dreams that I would go and I would see her mom, and her mom would be pushing a stroller, and I'd look in there and all I could see was a baby, but no face, And so I looked and looked and looked and looked. And it was in 17 years when by accident, I happened to be scrolling Facebook and there was a girl on there that I never even knew a person named Chloe.
Legacy Family Ministries is a nonprofit ministry. It is because of the generous gift of parents just like you that we're able to provide the tools and resources that families need to raise their kids with an unshakable faith in Jesus. Would you consider partnering with us today? You can make a difference in the life of a family by texting the word GIVE to 878-7814 or visit us at our website at legacyfamilyministries.com. All of your gifts are tax deductible. Thank you.
But she was from within California, which is where all my trouble had happened. And so I clicked on her profile, and there was my ex-girlfriend's name in her friends list. And so I reached out to her, and I got to share with her, like, listen, I remember the message I sent her on Messenger, and it was basically like, listen, I know you probably don't want to talk to me, but I would love an opportunity to tell you who I am and where I've come from and where I'm at now. I'm a youth pastor. I've been doing these things. I have a Christian ministry called Rags to Righteousness. I do Christian hip hop music, so I rap and my wife sings, and we go to churches and we go to group homes and we go to communities and we share the gospel, and just kind of shared with her my heart. And I told her, I says, I would understand if you want nothing to do with me, and I would respect it. If you say we don't need you in my life, I'll never bug you again. But if you would just give me a chance to talk to you, just an opportunity to talk to you, I would really appreciate it. And she reached back out to me and she talked to me, and I got to meet my daughter for the first time. She was 17 years old, and I just remember just being so racked with emotion at how amazing God is, how He could set somebody like me free, how He could restore a relationship with me and my daughter, how He could give me the life I have right now. It's just beyond anything I can comprehend. talking to my daughter, I told her, I says, I understand if you hate me. I understand if you don't want to talk to me. But if I could just share with you my heart. And she let me. And she told me, she's like, I don't hate you. I don't resent you. I want to get to know you. And so I hopped on an airplane. I hopped on an airplane more than a week. went over there and spent time with her. And she now lives here with us in Arizona. She's married. I got to do the ceremony for her wedding. And she has a beautiful little boy that's my grandson, my first grandchild. And, the awesome thing is she lives about a quarter mile away from me, and we get to have dinner. We have family dinners about one to three times a week, and I get to go and kidnap my grandson whenever I want. And it's just awesome how God restores us.
Thank you for sharing that with us.
Yeah, it's like, where do you go from there? That's awesome. But if I was a person walking that same path, Richie, that I was miles behind where you are now, what do you think the key principles are that you learned about how God works in those situations that I could look for and that I could benefit from?
I believe that it's important for us to grow a relationship with God. There's nothing that God won't do. There's so many different names for God that all talk about him being the restorer, the healer, the redeemer, the rewarder, all these different names for God. God literally wants to move in our lives. There's a book by Andrew Womack called, I think it's called Don't Limit God. And when I first got that book, I was like, I thought it was kind of ridiculous. I'm like, how could I limit God? And he goes on in there saying, we limit God by wrong thinking. We limit God by false beliefs. We limit God by a lot of things, One of the ways that we limit God, in my opinion, is we don't invite him in. We don't submit ourselves to him 100%. And it was in that moment, I believe it was in the moment when I began to submit to God and invite him into all areas of my life. I began to understand who I was in Christ. I began to understand that I had authority. I began to understand that I can speak to things in my life. I can speak life over myself and change the way I think and change the way I talk and change the way I react, change the way I respond, and began to really walk close, trying to be a living example of Christ, trying to understand who he is so I can walk the same way where things began to happen in my life. As you guys have heard in my testimony is pretty severe. I've done horrible things, yet God still showed up. I've done things that most people would never forgive somebody for doing, but God forgave me for doing it. I now walk without a criminal history. I don't have a background. I don't do drugs. I don't smoke tobacco. I don't drink alcohol. I don't do anything. I have a full life. I have 6 children. I have a wife that adores me. Everything's not 100% perfect. We're all flesh. We still make mistakes. I'm sure I get on my wife's nerves from time to time. But I say all that to say that my story is pretty severe. And there's been so many times where my wife should have left me. I was abusive physically, mentally. I wasn't a good person at all. But when we walk in what God has for us and we walk in a relationship with him, there's no way that you can actively seek God and not experience transformation. There's no way.
It's just remarkable how much God has transformed your life. Just getting back to the thing that you were talking about, you don't have a criminal record. You were headed for death row. How on earth did God pull that one off? Because we talk all the time about how God washes us clean. And of course he does that. It's clear in scripture. But he literally washed your life clean. How did he pull that off?
So I shared with you guys last time in the last episode that I had a dream that I was on the mission field and that I had been praying for a group of people. And when I woke up, I remember saying to myself, like, I can't leave the country. How is this even possible? And I remember it was the first and only time I'd ever, to this day, heard an audible voice. And it said, through me, all things are possible. And so I shared my story with my wife. My wife called my lawyer. My lawyer got really excited about it. She was saying, she's like, when we have people like you that have a past like you do, it's hardly ever a story of redemption. There's hardly ever a comeback. It's usually downhill from there. She was so excited that she was willing to take it and fight for me. Oh, I don't know if I mentioned this last time. She did it for free. Right? She did it for free. And the awesome thing is when I went to the court, the district attorney said, there's no way that I can take your charge of accessory to commit murder and there's no lesser charge. Like I can't make it, there's no charge that I can make it for a misdemeanor. But he said, what we're willing to do is we're willing to drop all charges, like withdraw your guilty plea and drop all charges. He made the decision to do that after I shared them the story. And I was 100% honest. I told them everything that happened, the trouble that I got into afterwards of getting out, the going back to drugs, the going back to this, my house being raided, me finding Christ, me getting set free, me being redeemed, me being drug free, starting a Christian ministry. I started a clothing line called Rags to Righteousness, and it was basically being a billboard for Christ. I put scriptures all over me, on my shirts and all this stuff. And I did that because when I was walking around Safeway or throughout Prescott, people would literally clutch their purses when they saw me. Or I even had a lady in front of me at Safeway leave the aisle. She was next in line. She left the aisle to go to another one because I was behind her. Though my outward appearance was intimidating to people and it scared people. And so I started a clothing line where it was like a billboard for Christ, right. And I would write hashtag Jesus, let me pray for you on the back, or I would write all these scriptures and stuff. And people started coming up to me and asking me for prayer and allowing me to talk to them. And so I'm sharing this with the courts, and I had the judge, the district attorney, my attorney, everybody in that courtroom was crying. They were so happy to hear the story because, like I said, you don't have that happening all the time. You don't have somebody, I was a Norteño in Northern California. There was a gang that I was in, Norteños. You don't have people like me coming back sharing a story like this. I go back home now, after many years of not going back home. I went back home and I was surprised to see that nobody I knew was out there anymore. I talked to a friend of mine, a family member. They say, hey, where's so-and-so? Where's so-and-so? So-and-so got shot. So-and-so's dead. So-and-so's gone. So-and-so's in prison for life. All the people I knew were dead and gone. All dead. They're in prison. They have no life anymore. But here I was given a second chance. Like God will just set you free. Right. I feel like God will show off in our lives. He'll show off. He didn't just set me free. He didn't just like, okay, I'm going to take away your drugs. He completely restored me as a man and restored my family. He brought my family back to me. What the enemy tried to take from me, God restored 7 times.
Hey, and not only that, but he's giving you a dream about traveling overseas, right?
Oh yeah. We just came back from Belize not too long ago, and my heart is still in Belize. I'm actually working on going back.
And that was a mission trip.
That was a mission trip, yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that desire that God's put in you.
So the mission trip was awesome. I was hoping that girl that I had prayed for in my dream was going to be there. But that did not happen. I believe I'm going to run into that girl someday. I really do. But going into another country, and for me, Amy was there with me, and for me, going into that country, like some of the spot in Belize were areas that were ran by gangs. and I felt so at home. And I was actually, I had the opportunity to share some of my music at a high school, and things didn't work out 100%, but I got to pray for some people. And some of the kids that I was praying for, they were saying, it kind of reminded me a lot of myself. Because when I asked them, how can I pray for them? They just wanted safety. And I remember feeling that same way when I was in the streets, when I was homeless on those streets. All I wanted was to be safe. All I wanted was to be comforted. All I wanted was love. I wanted to feel like I belonged to something, and I just wanted to be safe. And so when I got to talk to that kid, I ended up giving him my personal Bible because I just felt like God led me to do that because he looked like he was hungry. He looked like he really wanted something outside of his norm. And for me to be able to share him my story that your life doesn't have to be what your surroundings are. You can experience something greater than your surroundings. It was just really powerful. So I can't wait to go back.
I can't wait to see what God does in the future.
Yeah.
He may have a whole new ministry out there.
Amen.
I want to graduate Bible college too.
Yeah.
And that's pretty incredible. 2 years of Bible college, we're both graduating coming up. God's got some big plans.
Yeah, I'm excited about that. It actually kind of brought me to tears the other day, when we received our cap and gown. I'd never, one of the things I didn't tell in my testimony was I got kicked out of school at 7th grade for possession and sales of methamphetamines. I never went back. I never went back to school. So in my 30s, while juggling multiple ministries, youth church, family, I got my GED about a year ago, 2 years ago, and then now getting ready to graduate Charis Bible College. Huge step for me, and it's like, wow, this is so crazy. God just continues to restore. It doesn't stop. It just keeps going.
Right. But you said that the town you were from was called Woodland?
Yeah.
In California. And our Bible college is based out of Woodland Park, Colorado, which is another redemption, little piece of redemption. God's just so beautiful. I mean, just puts his little pieces in of handing back to you what was lost.
Yep. Amen.
Any final thoughts, Richie, on God's ability to restore?
I guess just to kind of go over that, what I said before, like, don't ever give up. If I can say anything to anybody, just keep pressing in. Don't give up. You're not too far gone. I know a lot of people would say this too, but I'm not comparing myself to him, but you look at Paul. Before Paul was Paul, he was Saul, and Saul was known for murdering Christians, persecuting Christians. And how much worse can you get? I mean, you're going around killing people, and then you're set free, and you end up writing a bunch of the New Testament. Like, God can definitely use anybody. It doesn't matter how far you are. I hear testimonies all the time of women in the ghettos that were prostitutes, that were selling themselves. I heard a story not too long ago of a woman who was selling her own children, that was set free and redeemed and has a beautiful relationship with those children. And it just goes to show, like, there's nothing that you could ever do that would separate you from the love of God. So keep pressing in, never give up, get tied in. And if you're done with yourself and you feel like there's there's nothing else you can do with your life, then give your life over to God and let him do it, because he will definitely show up and show out.
Well said, Richie. Nothing to add to that. You said that perfectly.
Thank you.
Awesome. All of those of you who are watching, thanks for joining us. Remember, just like Richie told us, God will never give up on you, never too far away. He will restore you, just like he's restored so much. So remember, you can't be a pro raising your kids with unshakable faith. And we'll see you next week.